Hello, Covenant family. Pastor John here, introducing our next psalm in our series on the Songs of Ascent. This coming Lord's Day, we'll be looking at Psalm 122. And so what I want to do is I want to just read the psalm with you and then pull out a few things for you to note and also questions for you to think about leading into this coming Sunday. Let's look at this together. Psalm 122, a song of ascent, and this is a psalm of David. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together, to which the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. Their thrones for judgment were set, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For my brothers and companions' sake, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good." Now, as we consider this psalm, one of the first things that we want to note is this is David, the king of Israel, who is writing this psalm. And this is a psalm of worship. However, as we work our way into the psalm, we begin to note that there's a lot of this psalm that is about Jerusalem. Some might even think, as we look at this, that this is sort of an ode to the capital city of Israel. Now, in a sense, that is true, but we must be careful not to get too bogged down in the emphasis upon Jerusalem, although that is important, but we must pull back and remember that this is a psalm directing us, teaching us as the people of God to worship the Lord our God. And one of the first things that we see in this psalm is that the people of God enjoy a privilege of worship. Again, David begins this psalm. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." This is an exclamation. This is a joyful announcement. I am joyful. I am so happy that we are going to the house of the Lord. The other thing to point out is that this is a celebration of corporate worship. This is not David alone, but rather he is going plural. Let us, we are going to worship at the house of the Lord. He then begins to describe Jerusalem as a fitting place for worship and those who will come and worship there. And so the second thing that I want to draw to your attention is, in addition to the privilege of worship, that there is a place of worship. In fact, the bulk of the psalm is about that place. And there are several things that I want you to begin thinking about as we lead into the preaching of this psalm on Sunday, and that is begin to ask questions about why does David emphasize the fittingness of Jerusalem? Why does he emphasize the tribes going specifically to Jerusalem? Why does he emphasize that this was decreed by God? And why does he emphasize the thrones of judgment? Why does he emphasize Davidic justice in this psalm? And so we see that there is an emphasis upon design, decree, and Davidic justice. Those are all things for you to begin thinking about in this psalm. And then finally, David says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And so the third part of this psalm that we want to emphasize, in addition to the privilege of worship, the place of worship, but also the prayer of worship. Prayer is an integral part of our worship, and David emphasizes this in the last part of the psalm. that we are to pray, and there are specific points that we're to note about our prayer. And so, as you're working your way through this psalm, you'll want to ask, well, why does he say pray for Jerusalem? Why not pray for Israel? Why not pray specifically for the tribes? Why does he emphasize a prayer for this capital city? Why does he emphasize peace? That Hebrew word shalom. Why does he emphasize and pray for security and peace within Jerusalem? And then, why does he pray specifically for the sake of his brothers and companions? Why is he praying for this peace, this security for others? Well, these are all questions that I want to encourage you to think about and to ask. And as you work your way through this psalm, maybe this is another psalm that you'll want to memorize. It's a fairly easy psalm to memorize, but regardless, please begin to read and to meditate upon this psalm and think about some of the questions that I brought to your attention, or you may have other questions as well as we draw close to this coming Sunday, where we will look at Psalm 122, the Psalm of David. I encourage you to be there and join with us. May God bless you in your continued endeavors of studying His Word.